Now I'm excited to introduce our host, visiting Professor Susan Gold, who is an American scholar with a 20-year career in higher education and positive social impact. She is a proven leader, facilitator, collaborator, and activist. She is widely regarded for her expertise in areas of corporate social responsibility, diversity and inclusivity, gaming for good, creativity, collaboration, game education, video games, and of course, game jams. Susan wants to leverage the connectivity that digital games provide us to influence and benefit each other around the world. Susan is the creator of the much loved Global Game Jam, the annual event that brings together over 40,000 game developers from around the world for one creatively explosive weekend of fun and innovation. In 2018, Susan launched a new extension of the brand called GGJ Next, a game jam and curriculum for young creators aged 12 through 17. She is widely regarded for her expertise in the area of game education and game design, game jams, community development, and large-scale collaborative projects. Consulting work has provided Ms. Gold opportunities to work with White House Office of Science and Technology, National Science Foundation, Environmental Protection Agency, MacArthur Foundation, Arizona State University, Herbiger Institute for Design and the Arts, and she is a skilled facilitator at bridging art, science, technology, industry, and academia. Her ability to utilize her expansive network help weave together large international audiences and projects. Susan is drawn to the diversity that makes up the global independent game development community. As a veteran and leader of the video game industry, she sits on numerous advisory boards, working groups, and nonprofit boards. So without further ado, I would like to hand it over to our visiting professor, Susan Gold.
Thank you so much. And thank you, DePaul alumni, for wanting to learn a little bit about video game history. I'll give you a little bit about me. Let me get my slides ready and shared. I want you to know that I asked my students primarily, what should I share with the alumni? And they were the ones that came up with the topic. Additionally, when I was talking about putting this together, I had one of my students in my class say, can I help? What can I do to help? And that student is here, Ethan Ladd, and he's going to be a senior in the game program. And I just had the honor of having him in my game production class, where I was able to bring in 10 different guest speakers throughout the quarter to give students a firsthand account of the industry and how game production works and how being a producer works. So it was a super exciting quarter for me, and we're just wrapping everything up. So me, I've been doing this for a little while, as like that long bio went on to go, but I started in fine arts. I had no idea I was going to become this games maven. I really didn't play games, or at least I didn't think I played games. And then I realized, oh my God, I really was a game player. And then now I'm a happy gamer and happy to wear that tag. My friends who go, how can you be going on 60 years old, Susan, and want to be a gamer? And I'm like, I want to game for the rest of my life. I have had the honor of being around like the inception of game education. And when I was at a small college, I had a real honor. One of our trustees was also a trustee at Carnegie Mellon, and they had this program called Entertainment Technology. And so they brought the two creators to this little college, and they said, they're going to mentor you, Susan, and you're going to create this program. And I'm like, why me? You know, like I have only lost boyfriends to games, I thought, right? So now I'm, you know, straddled with having to create a degree in something I know very little of. So what do? You immerse yourself in the subject, of course. And so I was fortunate. I lived relatively close to the San Francisco Bay Area. So I just shuffled down there. And I got to play cultural game anthropologist. I got to really learn how the studios work. I got to understand the uniqueness of game development and how technology, art, design, narrative, all of these pieces start to come together. So I kind of, I got it. Plus I had Randy Posh and this guy, Don Marinelli, to be my mentors. So I create this degree, and I'm trying to now blend everything that I see in a studio into a class. And it's really hard. So I come up with this degree and I do my best. They just started a computer science program and they had a digital arts program. So I was trying to marry it all. And so as I'm like trying to figure out what classes need to be offered, I start asking questions. And you know what happens to the person who asks the most questions? I'll tell you what, they make her in charge of figuring it all out. That's what happened to me. I started pestering the people so much. They're like, Susan, why don't you just figure it out? And so I did. And that's where I started to work large-scale collaboration. And large-scale collaboration is something that is really very hard to like kind of wrap your head around until you're in the middle of it and you have 200 plates spinning and you're trying to make sure everybody's happy. Never, ever a good place to be. But because I grew this education component of what is called the International Game Development Association, which is it's like a nonprofit, but not for trade industry. So for the game industry. And I grew the education group from 200 educators, which, by the way, DePaul was like one of the founding members. We started to come together with our ideas about what should really be in a curriculum. So we created this curriculum framework, and I had grown it from 2006 to 2008, the special interest group, from 200 to 2,000 people. So now I had like so many people with their hands in the kitchen. It was really hard to keep all the plates from falling. I had actually computer science people completely X out, the game design portion of the curriculum. They're like, you don't need this. I'd be like, what? But anyway, I learned how to work with people. And from there, once I had done this curriculum framework and I had met all these people from all over the world, I realized that our education gives our students a lot of stuff, but it doesn't allow them at the time to really make a game from beginning to end. And so I was at a conference in Sweden and I saw this presentation of games that were made in 48 hours from start to finish. And I was like, what? How do you do that? So I approached the people and I said, wouldn't it be cool if we just did this globally, simultaneously, and we'll create an electric buzz of creativity and innovation about games? And people thought I was crazy, except one. And he came over and he was like, I kind of like this idea. How do you think we can pull this off? And I'm like, I know a lot of people. And that's how I did it. I knew a lot of people and I used my network. So now the Global Game Jam is an event that brings people together for one weekend a year to make games based on a theme, well, that I used to choose, but I've retired from the Global Game Jam. I did it for a really long time. Anyway, 2017, 2018, I realized there's a need for kids to have the same opportunity. Now, what I learned in the Global Game Jam was that creativity and innovation, when kind of put into like a small, confined space, allows you to do several things. It allows you to fail quickly, or really start to hone in on a good idea. So for the Global Game Jam, it has been the start and inspiration to hundreds, if not thousands, of games that are out already in the world and published. Some of them have become very famous. I don't know if you ever remember Surgeon Simulator, or um, there are so many, but I just don't know what your level of gamertude is. So I'm just going to move on. Needless to say, being able to bring this to children was really one of my greatest life's accomplishments. And to see that many people participate in this, you know, just to know that 40,000 people are making games on that same weekend together. There is no politics. There is nothing that gets in our way of coming together. And the one thing that until COVID, it was about physically coming together and creating communities where there were none. So I was able to also launch game development studios and ecosystems in countries all over the world based on the Global Game Jam. And I've had a million opportunities to open up game development to countries all over the world through the Global Game Jam. So it's been a real pleasure and excitement to work in our industry. Now, for what you really came for, the history of games. And I think of the history of games as part of the building blocks of civilization. My friend Jane McGonigal tells this story in her TED Talk about Herodotus telling a story about a great famine in the land of Lydia. And, you know, we're talking pre-Greeks, right? And what had happened was this famine had the people so hungry, the king didn't know what to do. And because his people were hungry, they developed a game where half of the people would play on one day and the other half would play on the next. And while you were playing the game, you were so engrossed, you weren't hungry. So you went without eating that day. So, I mean, as I say, you know, games have been a part of our history since civilization's inception. And it has changed the way we interact with each other. Games provide us with a tremendous outlet. And I was listening to Brene Brown today, and she was talking about belonging. And I just realized games is really about belonging to a group. It's an expression. You create trust when you play a game, because if someone cheats, you never want to play with them again, right? You have a community. Like my mom and her bridge friends, let me tell you, they get together. They are the bridge people, you know, and they have their own little community of people. But it gives you a sense of belonging, playing a game, being with someone, sitting on the sofa or sitting on my chair and knowing that you're playing with me on the other side of the city, or maybe you're in Texas, or maybe you're in the Philippines. I love that ability that video games really has brought us. It gives us, I say trust twice, but I must have really thought it was an important item. But it also nurtures critical thinking. I mean, chess is a game, right? It is all about strategy, critical thinking, resource allocation. How do I handle a scenario? I mean, game designers we play poker. That's what we like to play, because we like that, the human variable, more than like we've already figured it out in 52 different tree expressions of what you could do in a game. Needless to say, games provide us with a lot of what I think is not only social, but a creative, a way to get out sometimes frustrations. I can tell you when I'm stuck at the doctor's office and they're making me wait, if I didn't have a game to play, I would lose my mind. So it helps me for mental stress. It helps keep me calm. I have certain games that really do just calm me way down, right? And I really enjoyed that. So I think that games are really so important for us as just a society in general. Now, video games have had a major impact in our world. 1952, computers are just coming up. Of course, what's the first thing they try to figure out how to play? Tic-tac-toe with a computer, right? Because that way they could test and they could know. Then, of course, by 1955, we're already getting into wargaming, doing scenarios to see what would happen between the US and Russia. I mean, now we're, Cold War is really coming on. 1958, the first game that you could really play with another person, not the computer, is on an oscilloscope, and it's what becomes Pong. And Pong didn't come around until 1972. And in 1972, when my mom got me that Atari and my sisters wouldn't play with me, I learned how to play with myself. It was it made such an impact on me. Like I said, I didn't know that I was a gamer, but I was. Well, 1958, the first, version of Pong comes around. The brown box is developed in the 60s. It's the first console. This guy, Ralph Baer, who we consider, the father of computer consoles. He creates this platform, and it's the first console, and it's sold exclusively with the Magnavox television. It's called the Odyssey, right? And, games are on it, but, it wasn't a huge success. Other things start coming around. Nintendo is now starting up pretty soon, and they don't make anything like the Atari or that. People start going into making cabinets, and we get the first video arcades, right? So what did we love to play in the video arcades? Do you remember? I remember my first time going into a video arcade. There was PacMan, but there was Tetris also. I can't even tell you how exciting it was. A quarter was golden to me. I saved quarters. I had no idea. I also liked pinball quite a bit. But, the Oregon Trail comes around, it's edutainment, right? But Nolan Bushnell, he creates the first arcade game in 1972. The Atari comes out. We have people playing. Now, all of a sudden, there is video games, and they become a pervasive part of our society. Now, I cannot talk about all the games. I can tell you that games are a part of so many people's lives. And as I mentioned, my mom and bridge, she also plays poker online. My mom also does, she's well into, my mom's 87, right? She is very much into it. Keeps her busy, keeps her mind active. Women play games more than young men, which is a strange statistic. We have a lot of women who really enjoy casual games. Now, we're going to talk about MUDs, PacMan, of course, and Tetris, Super Mario, Doom, Tomb Raider. And I can talk a lot about, the other games that came out around that time, but I'm going to start with what I think is the beginning, right? We had Pong, but when it comes to games, I had the great honor of meeting this man, Richard Bartle, and he told me his story of how he kind of came up with this idea of creating MUDs. Now you're like, Susan, what's MUDs? Well, originally they were multi-user dungeons, but then people were like, ah, no, it's a multi-user domain. No, it's a multi-user dimension. Everybody has their own way, but MUDs were essentially these games that you would program properly yourself, and you would be able to like just have a prompt, and you would be able to give an answer, and then it would move to the next one, and you would go through various kingdoms. As you can see, they have the most minimal of art, and this is what we call ASCII art, ASCII. And there is a whole genre of people who make like really very nice art now in ASCII for these games that have come out later. But these were the precursors to things like EverQuest and World of Warcraft and Ultima and even Second Life, because it provides a different universe, a different world for us to explore. And yes, fantasy, but it was fantasy that also allowed us exploration of our own imaginations. And for people playing these games, Richard really started to realize they were different archetypes of player. And each of us kind of becomes a particular kind of archetype when we play games. And he came up with 4 main archetypes, and they're like the achievers, the people that have to win all the time. They need to show off. They're all about status. Then there are the explorers. That's like me. I'm interested in the game, but I'm okay if I can, wander around, explore the world. I like to see what other people are doing. I like to see what's happening. I'm not so interested in necessarily always the gameplay. Then there are the socializers, people that are there to meet other people and talk. And that's great because it is about creating community and people having, like a guild or a group of people that they play a game with. And then there are the ones that I always find are students in my class, and those are the killers. Those are the ones that just go for, status kills. They want to show off. They also want to engage, but at others' expense. And this is not to say that this is a bad thing. It is a particular approach to how we explore the world. So it gives you a little psychological insight into it. Now, of course, after the MUDs, graphics got a little better, not a lot, a little better. And we got PacMan and Tetris, right? Now, PacMan, for those of you who don't know, originally, because it was like a little circle, they called it PacMan. And they thought, oh no, that could go wrong in so many ways. So they changed the name. And they wanted to find something that was neutral. It wasn't male or female also. So it kind of, until later when Miss Pac-Man came out, Pac-Man was just this neutral, I could be anyone. And the reason why they wanted, Namco wanted this was that they just wanted a game that girls would feel comfortable playing, and that it didn't have a sports theme, it didn't have a war theme. It's just a maze. You're being chased by ghosts, right? I always thought it was like this huge commercial success. And, because every one of my friends played, and they had the tabletop versions, and we would go to this arcade in the neighborhood, and we would sit there and we would play our Pac-Man, or I remember I also played a lot of Frogger. Those are the kinds of games that were kind of coming out then. And I love them all. And they are really silly. For like in my first year of teaching at DePaul, I had my students come up with live action versions of arcade games. It was so much fun. Anyway, arcades were my favorite, and I show my age by that. But Tetris was one of those games that I thought just came with the Game Boy, right? I didn't realize before I knew the history of games that Tetris was created many years before in 1984. And in that time, it went through several different kind of publishers because it was coming from Eastern Europe. We weren't able to transmit things digitally. I remember the first time someone talked to me about DLC, and I had to go look up what downloadable content was. Anyway, the game became a huge success even before it got to the Game Boy. And it wasn't until 1989 that it got to the Game Boy. In 1986, it was named Best Entertainment Software. It was named Best Original Game, Best Strategy Game, Best Consumer Software. It hit all the buttons. People were screaming about it at CES. But really, until everybody started to play it on their Game Boy, that's when I got introduced to it. So Game Boy comes out, and at that time, my best friend was on permanent bed rest. She was pregnant. And so, what do you do with your days? This is before the internet. So, what do you do with all your time? So we sat there and we just kept swapping the Game Boy back and forth to each other, trying to top each other's score. It was just one of those things on how we, spent our time, kept our mind busy, and was just like a part of my life. I couldn't imagine from that point on not having a Game Boy, right? I remember selling the Game Boy. It was only 3 years ago. Someone wanted a lot of money for it. I was like, well, okay. Because I wasn't playing it anymore. So I felt, okay, you can have it. But it's something I kept my whole life. I have also the DS. I have the Switch. I have, all of these handhelds have become just like a part of me and a part of my daily playing. Now, this is the Game Boy. This is actually the picture I used to sell it. It was wonderful. Oh, well, I miss it a little bit, just not having it, I think. Oh, well. So Super Mario, also, it comes out on the NES, right? But it also came out for Game Boy and Game Boy Advance. So that was super. Super Mario, as many of you know, was an arcade game. It is still an arcade game. It is still one of the greatest franchises in the world. Shigeru Miyamoto, who created it, it is one of his favorite things he's ever made. Essentially, you're a plumber, Mario, and your brother Luigi are trying to save Princess Peach from evil Bowser. And all I can tell you was that every game he's made, I have a love for. He also did Legend of Zelda. He did Donkey Kong. I am a big Donkey Kong fan. Again, another arcade game. So it was called the platformer, and this was the rise of the first platformer, right? So the MUDs, those were the rise of, these huge world quest type of environments. And then we have, this platformer. And a platformer means that you're just constantly, running in one direction. And you were running in one direction for a very long time, like until 2012. But that was one of the hardest things, is that, it definitely, you couldn't rewind. And finally, games were able to rewind. So hold on, I've made it through. Okay, Super Mario. So Super Mario franchise has sold more than 50 million units by 1996. So within 10 years of coming out, it is it's released on the NES in 1985. Over 40 million games were copies, because remember, you had physical cartridges at that time, were made and sold. And it was the best-selling NES game. Additionally, it has grown, of course, into this larger franchise. I remember when I got to play it on the Wii. I remember when I got to play it in a kart, Mario Kart, Super Galaxy in 3D. It has just been one of the greatest franchises and fun. It's not scary. Kids like to play it. Adults like to play it. It is probably one of the best games of all time. And I can't even tell you how many hours I have spent in that silly cart at the arcade. It's not comfortable for anyone, but it's a fun game to play. Now, this one was picked by Ethan. There's more Mario. Essentially, you're just running, trying to get items, jumping up, jumping over, going down plumbing tubes. All right, so Doom. Now, for many of you, this was when people started going crazy about video games because they were satanic. So just so you know, Doom was a game that started it was started by id Software, and John Romero and Carmack and Warren Spector, and I think Doug Church was there, but John took it over. And what it was a D&D, Dungeons and Dragons, which for those of you who may not know, is a role-playing game, paper and pencil. And so they had a failed quest while they were playing the game. And the world was overrun with demons. And they're like, that's a good idea for a game. Well, of course, when you start talking about demons, people start getting very nervous that we're trying to induct children into some sort of cult or something. So, as a game, it launched a genre, a first-person shooter, right? And we call these FPSs because we're so imaginative. We just use the first initials. But it was kind of so novel at the time. It had little loops of gameplay. It was released in 1993 originally. It's been rated the 19th top game of all time. Now there's been Doom 1, 2, 3. There's Doom Eternal. John Romero, who was the original designer of this, didn't make all of them. id Software, it got sold as a franchise to other people. Other game studios worked on it. There are better versions. But I seriously remember watching my ex play this, and the graphics, they don't look anything like this. They're that little pixel art with sprites. I mean, this was so low res. So, the art for here looks good, but you never saw anything like that, which I find kind of amusing. Additionally, around the same time, this is 1996 when The Legend of Zelda came out. And I think for many game players, this maybe it's your favorite game. This was one of those games, again, a Miyamoto design. It changed people's gaming behaviors. People were interested in the story and in the narrative. It gave a lot of people a lot of what do I want to call it? Like it was successful sales wise. It's had over 18 installments. It has, as I said, the narrative, the storytelling, the how you work through the puzzles. It's just an amazing odyssey, and people enjoy it thoroughly. And so again, it was E for everyone. And one of the things that I think the most successful games are the games that appeal to the largest demographic. And E for everyone is, pretty much where you go, you want. Now, Tomb Raider was another story. Tomb Raider sold 7 million units, and I had issue with it. I am friends with Ian Livingston, and I said, I understand that you originally were going to make this a male protagonist, etc. But why did you have to make it Barbie? So I did a whole, went crazy on them, and I said, like, she doesn't even look like she can stand up. Needless to say, tremendous success. My friend Ian Livingston is the president of Eidos for Life. And he has, he has very little to do with the franchises now, but he said that it was one of the most fun games to be a part of designing. And he said that beyond it being, just it was exclusive to the PlayStation, so they made a gamble. They thought that they would make it. They would make it eventually. It's on everything now, but they were gambling. I had a friend who also did a gamble for his game, and when you do that, you're saying that someone on another console cannot play your game, and it limits how many actual units you sell. But Sony was going to go crazy. And what year did the PlayStation came out? In 1994, 95. So that became one of Sony's biggest hits. Now, when you think about Tomb Raider and you think about the adventure, start thinking about now games are including not just artists, but they're really bringing in narrative designers, people that are adding depth and story to the games. Now, again, as you can tell, the first round of Tomb Raider isn't so pretty art-wise, but the work has evolved over time as graphic cards have. So, in the 90s, this is what it looks like. And then there were big changes. In 2001, Xbox launches for the first time. And now there is a lot of competition and a lot of people looking for games. And so a lot of things start to happen. Microsoft is like, we want more games. We want more people playing games. We want to find easier on-ramp for people to make games. And that really kind of changed the landscape for a lot of people. And this comes to the rise of independent games. Now, this to me was one of the most important pieces of game history, because I felt that I was a big part of it. And in so much as when we started game education, we had students making their own game engines. And now I know that sounds, like you're going, what does that mean? But it's, what you need to make the game to run. And around this time, there became tools and software available for people to start to make their own games. So Microsoft was gambling that these new tools, and they had a whole suite of them, were going to make it easy for people to make games. And it was. And this started the rise of independent development. Now, it took a very long time for people to really, say, oh, I'm not going to make my own game engine anymore. Everybody was very tied to that. But when I started in 2008, 2009, people started to make game engines and they made them available for free, meaning that all you had to do was learn the code for that engine and you would be able to easily move your game into that pipeline and, essentially push a button and output to Xbox, right? Or output to, well, it took a little while for PlayStation, but output to Xbox, it was definitely available. And that made this rise of indie so important because now all of a sudden people didn't have just AAA game developers. Man, I'm talking too long about too much, going too long. But you were an independent game developer and you can make your own games and you can make games about anything you want. And this I have down is Flower, which is what I think is one of the better indie games. There are great indie games, but in Flower, essentially you follow a pedal through the game and you're just on the wind. And there's such a comfort and beauty to this game that it didn't appeal to the AAA developers. It appealed to a much more niche group of people. So, I had mentioned Braid. So Braid was, again, an indie game made by one person because he had the ability to use now game engines. And the reason why I say it was part of this is the Global Game Jam was the first to distribute free game engines. So it was kind of like, part of that stepping stone. Now, from this, we've had games like Stanley's Parable. Maybe you've played Among Us or Spelunky, Inside, Limbo, Fez, there's so many great indie games, Hotline Miami, that are so important. But since I'm running out of time, I have to move quickly ahead to talk about one, League of Legends, which came out originally in 2009. It has a massive fan base and has become one of the premier esports. Now, like I told you, I wish I had talked to that reporter about esports in 2008, but it has become one of the most dominant areas, not only of business, but of how people are designing games. So this was intended to be a successor to a mod for World of Warcraft. It ended up being, something beyond that. Now it has a free-to-play business model, and it has so many users, and you can watch League of Legends tournaments. You can watch them on ESPN, TNT. I mean, they're all over. I have a friend who's in Brazil, and he runs these tournaments. And he has coliseums before a pandemic of people that would come, and they would spend $300 to watch other people play League of Legends. So it changed a lot how the gaming industry evolved. And it's then, it still has a tremendous amount of players. We have on the DePaul, we have several teams for professional competition, collegiate competition on the League of Legends. And we also have it for our Fortnite, which is what most of you probably have been hearing about. Your kids are playing, or you've heard it on the news. because of the amount of money primarily that this game brings down. Now, it started as 3 game modes, but what became the most popular was its Battle Royale. And it's a competitive game where up to 100 people can jump into the game at once on a large map. And it's essentially last man standing. And people love it. It's crazy. Now, like, just to give you an idea of the money, and not to think that I just think about the money, but games is a business, and that's what's going to drive what happens in our industry. So just to give you an example, in the month of April 2020, Fortnite brought in $400 million. Now, there are mobile games that bring in 23 million a month, but not 400 million a month. 23 million a month, I always thought that's pretty amazing, right? You know, I'd be happy with 5,000 a month, but hey, 23 million on mobile. Fortnite does 400. Now, subsequently, since the pandemic, there's just even more people on it. Fortnite estimates that there are 3.5 million online players. And again, it's free to play, but you can buy things, and that's where they're really making their money. On just one set of skins, which is like, I don't even know how to describe skins. It's just like, you know, a set of clothes for your player that maybe has some sort of power up or special. They made $50 million just selling those. I mean, it's an amazing way of how people are spending their time. People are playing together. A year ago, Drake got online and played Fortnite with someone and pretty much broke the internet. People come together around these games, and they're just such a big part of our society at this juncture. They're in every community. The Global Game Jam, my nonprofit, is in 119 countries. So games is pervasive, and play is the global language. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope I can entertain some questions now.
Well, first of all, thank you so much, Professor Susan Gold, for all of this information. I was extremely into it, and we had a few questions. And everyone else, please, you can send your questions through the chat feature below or through the Q&A feature. One question that came in was, how has the evolving tech for gaming resulted in new code and APIs for modern connectivity?
So recently, you may have seen Mark Zuckerberg's Facebook Connect talking about the metaverse and what their plans are. And when you start to, I always play this game, follow the money. Where are people investing? They're investing in blockchain technologies. They're investing in this metaverse concept, AR and VR, and APIs and apps are being developed exclusively for those and to improve our lives. I mean, they're not supposed to take us away. They're supposed to help us in our productivity and hopefully we can explore and play in these, different realms that they're creating. I think it's going to be extremely interesting. I think provenance and ownership is going to be a big thing. So I think blockchain technology is also going to be really important. Not necessarily cryptocurrency. I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about the actual blockchain technology related to that for APIs.
Okay. Another question that came in. How does certain games gain popularity like Fortnite?
So it's a lot of work. It's a lot of marketing. It's influencers, it's social media. So now when you launch a game, you really have, I mean, because if you look on any app store, thousands of games are being uploaded and up for sale. How do you find, my dad's like, which solitaire should I download, Susan? And I'm like, well, because there are thousands of them, right? And so, you have to be very effective with your marketing, and additionally, you have to like have Twitch, and you have to have influencers playing your game, etc. And actually, Ethan just asked me if he could put a little input on this one. So please, Ethan, I'd love to have you share.
Sure. Doubling down on the influencers aspect of this, Among Us was a game that before like the boom it had over COVID, it was released 3 years prior to that, but only once big influencers started playing started playing Among Us did it really actually become popular. And the predecessor to Fortnite's Battle Royale mode, PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, also similarly flew under the radar until PewDiePie played it on Twitch, and then it saw that massive boom. So it's a lot of it can just be dumb luck if it's not like a big AAA developer backed by a publisher dumping tons of money into marketing. So sometimes it's just a coin toss.
Yeah. I should say that in the big games, like they'll put 25% of their budget into marketing. So and they pay the influencers a lot of money. It's amazing. I'm always just like, how much did you make just to play that game in front of the world? I'm like, oh my God. I just feel too old. Like, where was this when I was growing up? Yeah.
Someone said, Gabriella said that they were able to visit, meet, tour, and get the autographs of the entire team at ID in Texas for Doom 3.
Oh, very cool. I am amazed at Fandom. Like, it is one of the things. So I go to a lot of conferences, but I don't usually go to anything that's consumer oriented. But occasionally I'll get, tapped to do a talk or something. And then I see like the cosplay, and I am like, I just like, it just boggles me. And I mean, people spend thousands of dollars on creating these costumes and the makeup, and it's really, I mean, as a developer, as someone who's designed games, to see that outpouring of emotion that they love what you made so much that they must dress up like that. I mean, I seriously, I thought, I mean, I was laughing because like I came across like all these Zeldas in one place, and I'm like, oh my God, they were all just talking to each other, and they were all dressed up the same with the pointy ears and the hat. And I'm like, I mean, if I told my mother that she would have just said, this is a freak world, like she would just think we're all freaks. I don't care. I'm like, enjoy whatever floats your boat. You love it, enjoy it. If the BioShock thing, I mean, like, BioShock is this huge metal thing, and people wear that around a conference all day, and I'm like, wow, all power to you.
It looks like we have time for one more question. Do you think that the games that are geared towards children are the most successful now, or the games for adults?
Games for middle-aged women are the most successful. Like I told you, that game Gardenscapes or Homescapes, I don't know if you ever see that on your phone. They bring in so much money on a monthly basis. I mean, and they don't have just one game that's bringing in 24, 25 million a month. They have 5, 6 of those, right? Now they have others that, you know, they're trying to get up to that level. But yeah, we're talking, you know, just like they have a formula, they know what's working. And middle-aged women are the biggest demographic for games. There is a huge rise in this thing called hyper casual, which essentially you just need a lobotomy to do. You just do this. I mean, there's no thinking, and unbelievable amount of money being made in it. And you know, so I had a hyper casual game that I had pitched. Now, games are expensive to make, so I did a startup, and you know, we thought it would cost $2 million to make, and we sent it out to a company that tells you how much it's really going to cost you to make, and they came back with 12, and like we realized we couldn't make that game, but we could find other people too, right? You know, so that's the nice part about it. But yeah, industry costs a lot of money. Getting great developers costs money, but the potential outcome for making money is great. And the people with the most disposable income, you know, middle-aged females.
Well, it looks like we are here at 7 o'clock. I want to thank you so much, Professor Susan Gold. Thank you so much, Ethan, for hopping on as well. And thank you all for joining us this evening. We appreciate this, and this will be recorded and distributed in a few weeks. So I hope you all have a great evening, and thanks again for joining us. Good night.
Good night.